We kind of been gearing up for this particular chapter the last couple of weeks, telling you, hey, when Exodus 32 comes, and then we're going to hit some things. And so sure enough, we are. Have you ever seen or heard some awful act on the news and thought, I never would have done that? Right? We see something, we're like, no, there's no way. There's no way you'd ever see me there or with those people. I think this is how we look at the events of Exodus 32. There's like no way I would do that. I mean, if I was at Mount Sinai and had just seen God do all these many miracles leading up to that, and then even remember last week we saw that like God showed up, right? He showed up on the mountain, and even some of the elders got to eat with him, and they didn't die, which was big in that time frame. There's like no way I would ever have made a gold statue. No way. I'm not going to build a gold statue to replace God in my life. How many of you guys would be honest and say, there's no way I would have done what the Israelites did? All right, so yeah, I'm like, no way, man. There's no way that I'm going to do this gold calf statue thing. No way. Yet how many of us actually have replaced God? Not with a gold statue of a calf, but we've replaced him with something else. Maybe we've replaced him with a political ideology that demeans others that vote differently than us. Maybe we replaced God with a self-sufficiency that declares, I can handle things on my own. I don't need God. Or maybe just any coping mechanism we use when stressed or worn out, other than praying and seeking comfort from the Holy Spirit. I wonder if we've done that. Or how about any kind of altered identity other than just being a child of God and knowing you're made in his image? These and more are things that we actually replace God with in our life. And any time and anything that replaces God in our lives is our golden calf. So, when we look at the events of Exodus 32 today, I don't want you to look at them as something that happened long ago. Like, oh, those stupid Israelites. All right? What I want you to do is we will hear about this, but I would rather you not just hear about it. I want you to see something that you must deal with and find your way out from, because far more times than not, we are actually just the same spot that the Israelites are in. It just isn't a golden calf. So I want us to look at golden calf a little different today. Yes, the golden calf represents the temptations we put in our path, the things we use to replace God in our lives, but the golden calf acts also and represents the trials or tests that God puts in our path, the things God uses to reinforce his place in our lives. So what has God placed in front of you to reinforce his place in you, and what have you placed in front of you to replace God? In short, kind of think of it this way. What tests and temptations do you face? What tests and temptations do you face? I'm going to show you 4 tests and temptations today in Exodus 32 that I found. There might be more in Exodus 32. I guarantee there's more than 4 tests and temptations in this world. But just in this chapter, I know that there's these 4. And just going to warn you, there's the first one. So they all start with P. All right? Us pastors do this sometimes. We like a letter and we stick with it. All right? And I did that today. So forgive me if you hate that. And love me if you do. So, all right. So we're good, right? So patience is the test number 1. And this test of patience is in reference to the patience of the people. All right, so all that million or so people that have made their way to Mount Sinai, if you remember where they're at, is they are at the bottom of the mountain while Moses has gone up to the top or the higher levels of the mountain, and he is spending 40 days and 40 nights with God. When we walk through it, he's getting how to build the tabernacle from God during this time frame, all right? This has got to be near the end of the 40 days, just based off of the story. So let's give it 30 to 35 days, somewhere in that time frame. We don't know exactly. But we know this happens in verse 1 of Exodus 32. When the people saw how long it was taking Moses to come back down the mountain, they gathered around Aaron. And just to be fair, Moses had been up the mountain and down, up and down, and he'd been up maybe more than like 7 days. There was a couple times where he kind of up and down. So this is the first time he hadn't come down. So they kind of like, where is the dude? And that's okay to say, hey, where is he? But they came to Aaron and they said, come on, make us some gods who can lead us. We don't know what happened to this fellow, Moses, who brought us here from the land of Egypt, right? So they're essentially saying, since Moses and God are nowhere to be found, make something we can see and be led by. We need to visually see this. This patience that they've had has simply just come to an end. And here's what we need to know about patience, is that when we lose patience, we also lose perspective. When we lose patience, we also lose perspective. And this is what I mean by this. Making us some gods. So this is their idea. They had this idea. I'm going to talk like the Israelites for a moment. Make us some gods who can lead us. Israelites, didn't God already lead you? He took you out of 430 years of slavery with 10 plagues and this miraculous crossing of the Red Sea. Then he gave you food to eat and drink, water from these impossible places. Kind of sounds like God was leading you, right? But they lost patience, so they lost their perspective. And now they're saying, we need a God who can lead us. But God was leading them. They just didn't like the fact that they were supposed to be waiting instead of going. So they didn't like the option that God was giving them. How many of us have ever not liked the option that God is giving us? Yeah. Right? And we can lose our perspective because we've lost our patience, and then we start replacing God with other things and think those things will lead us to the place we want to go.
That's good.
What we must realize is this: while we're waiting, God is always working. While we're waiting, God is always working. So this is where the song Waymaker comes in so beautifully for us. It says this: even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop. You never stop working. If we could grab a hold of this and live this out, because it's easy to sing, it's another thing to live. Right? Because when we don't see him working, we're like, where are you? When we don't feel him working, like I said, I got the goosebumps from the song, but what if a song doesn't give you goosebumps? Could God still work in that song? Right? So just keep he always is working. He's never stopped working. Though it looks like he's doing nothing there at the mountain because they're all waiting around, he's working. He's working with Moses, right? They're working out the tabernacle. And then even after this, he gives him the law. And then, so he's always working. God is always working. And because he never stops working, we must never stop believing. And we must never stop doing what is good. And patience is good. And that's why I connect that to Galatians 6:9. So let's not get tired of doing what is good. At just the right time, we will reap a harvest of blessing if we don't give up. We'll have some fun going through Galatians here in just about a month or so, because that's what we're doing in our life group study and series. Patience has a harvest because it's good. It's a harvest of blessing if we don't give up. So, do we lack patience? Test number 1 is patience. But the temptation is to not be patient with God and others. Do you see how the test is patience, but the temptation? See, God doesn't tempt anyone. We'll look at that verse that tells us and reminds us that. No, go back. But test 1 is patience. But lingering near the test of patience is the temptation to not be patient with God and others. Test 2 is pride. And specifically in this moment, this is the pride of Aaron. All right, the pride of Aaron. Let me read some verses to you so you can see Aaron's pride. Aaron is responding to the Israelites in verse 1 when he says this in verse 2 and following. He says, take the gold rings from the ears of your wives and sons and daughters and bring them to me. There's your first sign. Me. Pride always looks at me. Point your finger at yourself. Me. This is where pride starts. It doesn't start with others, it starts with you. Your pride. It's okay to have pride in things that you accomplish. It's okay to have pride. Pride is not evil. But when we take pride when we're not supposed to, when we're supposed to be living more in humility, pride itself it's okay. I'm proud of my girls. I am proud of my daughters and my bride. I am proud of you, this church. But we have to be careful when we have pride not to make that pride become the golden calf. That's what happens here. Aaron says, bring it to me. Aaron should have said, no, we aren't doing this. All the people took the gold rings from their ears and brought them to Aaron. Then Aaron took the gold and melted it down and molded it into the shape of a calf. Please just remember that. Aaron melted it down and molded it into a shape of a calf. Just remember that. All right? When the people saw it, they exclaimed, "Oh, Israel, these are the gods who brought you out of the land of Egypt." Aaron saw how excited the people were. This is when pride gets puffed up. Look at his response. When he sees how excited, "Oh, I built this, and look at how people are responding." He does what? He built an altar in front of the calf. The people didn't ask for an altar, but because Aaron got so excited about what was happening, look what I've done, he then puts an altar in front of the calf, and then look what he does. He announces, tomorrow will be a festival to the Lord. That's not what God wanted. God already talked about festivals back in chapter 25. He had already talked about festivals. God's the one that says when a festival is happening, not you, Aaron. So this is interesting here, this whole dynamic of what's happening. What's happening here is this. Aaron thought he was better than Moses. In this moment, Aaron thinks he's better than Moses. Now track with me. Aaron's the older brother, all right? Moses is the one who gets the opportunity to be the deliverer. However, do we remember the interaction that Moses has with God at the burning bush? Not so confident, right? He's like, I need Aaron. And so if you know this, Aaron, through the entire 10 plagues, through the entire process, Aaron is the voice. Aaron is the one speaking to Pharaoh, not Moses. But it is, just so you know, it's not till the end when Moses tells Pharaoh, set my people free, let my people go, did they get free? Just a side note, it's when Moses speaks that it happens, not when Aaron speaks. But Aaron was speaking for Moses through the whole process. In fact, I could just think this, why did God have to choose Moses? I could have done it. In fact, I was the one who was the mouthpiece. I was the one speaking. In fact, I was the one that grabbed the staff, Moses gave me the staff, and I'm the one who put the staff on the ground, and it became a snake. I'm the one who did all that, not Moses. So I can be the one to lead them now, because where's Moses? I am better than he is. And once Moses comes down, all right, we're going to jump ahead and then we'll come back. Moses comes down because God has told Moses about what's taken place. When he comes down, this is what he says to Aaron, verse 21. What did these people do to you to make you bring such terrible sin upon them? Moses is like, dude, you were leading. I gave you, you were in charge. So he's pointing the finger at the leader. What did these people do to you? But look at Aaron's response. He says, don't get so upset, my Lord. You yourself know how evil these people are. Aaron thought he was better than the people. Aaron looked at the people he was leading and said, they're just a mess. I am so much better than they are. Look, what did these people do to you? Moses says to Aaron. Aaron says, you yourself know how evil these people are. And it continues, he says, they said to me, make us gods who will lead us. We don't know what happened to this fellow Moses who brought us here from the land of Egypt. Aaron thought he was better than the people. He viewed them as less than himself. He viewed the people of God less. He said, they were evil, they did evil, but not me. I didn't do evil. They made me do it. There's a devotional that I did back when I was a teenager, and it said, if you say the devil made you do it, you blew it. That's the only thing I remember about the devotional is the title. But I love the title. If you say someone else made you do it, you blew it. And here, Aaron has blown it. Now, if that's not outrageous enough, if verses 21 through 23 aren't enough for you on Aaron's pride, just wait till he says, till we read what he says in verse 24. Do you remember what I told you? Remember how Aaron, he melted the gold, he molded the gold to the calf? This is still, like, to me, the most outrageous thing the most outrageous thing I've ever read in the Bible. Not the most, I've got some others. But this is up there. And so he's telling Moses what happened. So I told them, whoever has gold jewelry, take it off. And when they brought it to me, I just simply threw it in the fire, and out came this calf. Now, as a dad, I definitely have had some moments where my daughters have had that they haven't said, out came this calf, but like, I don't know, it just happened, Dad. Right? I mean, when I was a youth pastor, I guarantee I had some students who'd be like, I don't know, Pastor David, it happened. And then in 23 years of ministry period, I've seen that. I remember coaching at Marion High School on the football team, and the linemen, sometimes they make a mistake, and whether it's in practice or in a game, they mistake it, they didn't block whoever, they're like, I don't know. You had an assignment. That's where you were supposed to be. He just showed up. That was the idea, right? I mean, so this is the craziness, right? This isn't just like insane. But what you don't maybe notice is this is actually Aaron saying that he's actually thinks he's better than God. He actually is acting like he's better. It just showed up. It's a miracle. I mean, I made this calf. Wow. I'm better than God. How many of us ever kind of have those kind of moments? I'm just so good. I'm just so good at what I do. It's not God who gave me that. Do we think we're better than those who lead us? Do we think we are better than our bosses, our leaders, our coworkers? Do we think so highly of ourselves that we actually think lowly of others? Do we think we can do things better than God? See, the issue here is Aaron had pride. That was his test. But his temptation was this: to think I can do it better. The test was pride. The temptation is to think I can do better. So it's okay to be tested in your pride, but don't give in to the temptation to make you think I can do it better. Because I guarantee you, I remember when I was a young college student who wanted to be a pastor, and I would listen to a sermon, or I was a youth pastor listening to a sermon and going, oh, I would do that so much better. And I remember my first sermon, it sucked. I mean, but we can listen to someone go, I could do that better. But instead of saying I could do it better, we need to have that humility and let God work through us in the time frame and the process that he needs to work through us. Because if we think we are better than others, then watch out, because we're not supposed to view ourselves better than others. And so we got to realize that, right? That's so important. Better than our leaders, better than others, or even better than God. Test number 3, power and prestige. All right, power and prestige. Told you I put 2 P's in this one. So power and prestige. This was the test. This is a test on Moses. We've had the test of the people. We've had test of Aaron. But even Moses got tested. Moses had nothing to do with the golden calf. Nothing. And yet there's even a test for him in the midst of this golden calf. Because we all are tested. We may not be the ones who are tested in that way, but we might find ourselves tested in this way. Check it out. Verse 7 of Exodus 32. This is where the power prestige test begins for Moses. The Lord says, quick, go down the mountain. Your people whom you brought from the land of Egypt have corrupted themselves. I want you just to notice what God says. God says to Moses, your people. He's saying, Moses, your people whom you brought. Do you see it? This is the first part of the test. Moses could have been like, yeah, that's right. I did bring these people. Yeah, I did lift up that staff and the Red Sea opened up. Yeah, I did strike the rock. I did call out for quail. Right? I mean, he could be like, yeah, I did lead them. They are my people. Wow, yeah, okay. I'm pretty great. Yeah, they're my people. But look, then God's not done. God says this in verse 10. Verse 10, he says, now leave me alone so my fierce anger can blaze against them and I will destroy them. Then I will make you, Moses, into a great nation. I hope you get it. Destroy everybody and I'll start over with you, Moses. Power and prestige right here. I led the people and God's going to start over with me. God's going to make me great. And I want you to notice what Moses does with this. It's so important to see because he has this chance to make himself great. And I want to tell you, I don't think like this verse, back. I don't think this verse that says that he's got this fierce anger, he wants to blaze against him. I don't think God is actually doing it. It's kind of like that moment where you challenge your kids, if you don't put clothes on, you're going to school naked. I don't know if you ever used that challenge. I don't honestly remember if we used that challenge, and I don't think we did. I've definitely heard the challenge before. But what if you got a kid who's like, okay. Right? I mean, when you got to be careful what challenges you put out there. But I think God is putting the challenge out there. I'm going to destroy them, and I'll make you great. And I don't think God's literally going to make him great. He's testing Moses to see if Moses will pass the test. Okay? Right? And so then with that in mind, I want you to see Moses' response in verse 11 and verse 13. Verse 11, Moses tried to pacify the Lord, and he says, why are you so angry with your own people, whom you brought from the land of Egypt with such great power and such strong hand? See it? God says, Moses, your people whom you brought. Moses responds, no, your people whom you brought. Who gets the power and the prestige there? Moses or God? All right, so then the other thing that Moses had to deal with was, we're going to destroy all of them and I'll make a great nation out of you, Moses. Well, look at verse 13. Moses says to God, remember your servants Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. You bound yourself with an oath to them, saying, I will make your descendants as numerous as the stars of heaven. I will make you a great nation. And I will give them all this land that I have promised to your descendants, and they will possess it forever. I hope you see what is going on here in this moment. Oops, ahead of myself there. I hope you see that this power and prestige test is really, okay, God's giving Moses all the power and prestige, and what you need to do to pass that test is actually give it all back to God. When someone says, wow, what a great job you did at work. Well, I think we're going to give you a promotion. Maybe like you find the house you've been looking for. You're like, yeah, I worked hard for that. Or do we take that and go, God provided that. God's going to get the attention for my promotion. Right? That's the test. Yeah, it's like pride, but different. Because of the idea that you are gaining. He was gaining power. He was gaining prestige from God. And yet God didn't want him to keep it. God wanted him to defer it. God wanted him to deflect it back to God. That's kind of like we know about the devil when he was, before he was a fallen angel, we believe he was like the worship angel, right? And the visual I always grew up with was the idea is that all the worship was coming towards, and I don't know, I'm not making a biblical thing, this is what I remember growing up. All the worship was coming towards Lucifer, and Lucifer then would turn and release all the praise towards God. That's like the visual that I remember growing up with. Not saying that's the fact, but that's the visual, and I can't remember scriptures that would back that up. I just remember that's the visual that's stuck in my head. And what happened is Lucifer didn't want to turn back to God. He wanted the power and prestige. And that's why he's like, okay, I'm going to take control now. And how many of us try to take control in our lives with power and prestige? We need to be careful about that. Do we seek it for ourselves, or do we point the attention to God? Here's where the test is. The test is power and prestige. The temptation is to seek what I can gain for me. Power and prestige, that's the test. What are you going to do when power comes your way, when prestige comes your way? You should deflect it or reflect it to God. Give the credit to God. The temptation is to seek what I can gain for me. I'm going to hold on to it, keep it for myself. All right? The fourth one is purpose. The fourth test is purpose. And this is the purpose of the Levites. The purpose of the Levites. Why were Levites chosen to be God's people, to be the priests, to be the temple assistants and all of that? What happens here is Moses has come that right. Okay, so they build the calf. They have this party. It says pagan revelry, which means just bunch of just sexual, sensual, just mess that's happening there. As that's happening, Moses is up on the mountain. God says to Moses, you got to get down there to the people. And Moses and God have a conversation. We've just seen the conversation about, hey, I'm going to destroy them. Moses says, no, these are your people. Remember your oath. Okay, I'm not going to destroy them. And Joshua, by the way, is up there. That's a side note. But and so Joshua and Moses come down. Moses talks to Aaron. Aaron goes, I don't know how it happened. Surprise, calf. And just the whole journey. And so then this is where we get to where Moses then calls this out and he doesn't call for the Levites, but he calls out this statement. He shouts he stood at the entrance of the camp and shouted, verse 26, all of you who are on the Lord's side, come here and join me. And it says, and all the Levites gathered around him. So Levites knew whose side they were supposed to be on. And this says to me that Levites didn't get involved in the process of the mess. In fact, I don't think everybody was involved in the mess. If they were, I don't think they would have killed 3,000 people that day. I think would have killed 900 and something thousand people that day. But 3,000 are killed. So this is what I think. All of you who are on the Lord's side, come here and join me. And what they were asked to do, to me, is unimaginable. They were asked to go around the camp and kill their fellow Israelites. In fact, we learn from the next verse that we look at, verse 29, that it's not the underlined part, verse 29, but killing your own sons and brothers. I couldn't imagine it. I couldn't imagine that possibility of that God wants me to do that. But what we read in verse 29 is that Moses says to the Levites, today you have ordained yourselves for the service of the Lord, for you obeyed him even though. Now, it says it meant killing your sons. Okay, even though, ... fill in the blank. For you obeyed him even though. God may not be calling you to kill somebody, but what is he calling you to do? Will you obey him even though? Will you obey him even though? Here's what you need to know about this moment. You need to understand what your purpose is. Actually, so to understand the purpose is to understand the Levites' purpose. What was the Levites' purpose? The Levites' purpose was to be on God's side in all things. This was the Levites' purpose. He said, all of you who are on the Lord's side, come to me. And all the Levites gathered to Moses. And then Moses said, you got to go around and kill some people. Now, I believe who he was asked to kill were the instigators and the ones who were dividing the place from following the Lord versus worshiping at this golden calf and all that was connected to it. This right here is not just the Levites' purpose. This is your purpose. If you want to know what your purpose as a follower of Jesus is, this is it right here. It is to be on God's side in all things. It is to be on God's side in all things. That means not to be on the Republican side in all things. That means not to be on the Democrat side in all things. That means not to be on Black Lives Matter side in all things. That means not being in the alt-right in all things. That means not being on a female side in all things. That means not being on the male side in all things. That means not being on the poor side in all things. That means not being on the rich side in all things. It means being on God's side in all things. So what's your even though? We are called to obey him even though. You want to be blessed by God and watch God direct your life in a powerful and a miraculous and supernatural way, then obey him even though, and be on God's side in all things. In all things. Do you know and follow God's purpose for your lives? Maybe for some of us in this room, this is the first time we've ever heard this. Maybe the first time we've ever heard, this is God's purpose for my life, to be on his side in all things. Because that's what matters. And if you want a New Testament perspective on that, I could just very well just get that moment where Jesus was asked about paying taxes. And what does he say? He says, show me a coin. Who faces on the coin was Caesar. Give to Caesar what is Caesar's, and give to God what is God's. Caesar's image was on the coin. God's image is on you. Give to Caesar what is Caesar's. Give to God what is God's. Because we are called to be on God's side in all things. There's two other tests I will talk about in our deeper dive that I'll do early this week, and you can watch them in our family group, and I'll have those for you. They're from chapter 33 and 34. I'm not doing those today, but here's the test. Number 4 is purpose. The temptation is to find a lesser purpose. And I just spoke lesser purposes to you. Anything I just shared is a lesser purpose. Doesn't mean that some of those things aren't valuable or important or necessary to be in our lives, but those are lesser purposes. And that's the temptation, is to follow a lesser purpose. But the test is purpose. And so I think there's an important question to ask here, is how do I know the difference between a test and a temptation? They're very, don't you see the layeredness? They're very similar, very close. It's kind of important to know what's the difference between a test and a temptation. So I want to finish out by jumping into a New Testament book for a moment, into the book of James, just for a couple of verses. And I want to show you how you can know the difference between a test and a temptation. James is written by Jesus' half-brother. And James was the church leader of his day. And there's so much to know about James. But James, he just gets right to the heart of it. I just love the book of James. He just love it. And he just says these few things. Verses 2 through 4 of his first chapter. He says this, dear brothers and sisters, when troubles of any kind come your way, consider it an opportunity for great joy. That's beautiful. That could preach. We're just going to go through it. For you know that when your faith is tested, your endurance has a chance to grow. So let it grow. It's okay to be tested. If you want to grow, you're going to get tested. Right? If you don't remember, some of you guys know this because you're still in school or you're going back to school. Whatever. For those of us who are no longer in school, you couldn't go to the next grade until you passed the test. Some of you spiritually are still in kindergarten because you're not passing the tests that God has been putting before you. And some of us are still in junior high. Some of us are in high school. You know what I'm saying? So we're like in different levels of maturity where God wanted you to go. That's like, I think Peter's the one that says you still crave spiritual milk, right? And you should be feeding on solid things. All right, so we want it to grow. For when your endurance is fully developed, you will be perfect and complete, needing nothing. And then just a few verses later, James says this about temptation. He says, temptation comes from our own desires, which entice us and drag us away. These desires give birth to sinful actions, and when sin is allowed to grow, it gives birth to death. Verse 13, I believe, it says that God does not tempt anyone. So temptation comes from our own desires. So I have these two comparisons for you. The first one is this: tests develop you, temptations degrade you. I was just in this matching word thing. I'm sorry. But degrade you, deteriorate you, crumble you. Temptations, they take out the foundation. They destroy that part of who you are. But tests don't destroy you, they develop you. Tests make you strong. They help you endure, help you grow. Temptations don't do that. I think this is a better one for you to take home. I hope you'll take this one home more than anything. Tests draw us closer to God. Temptations draw us away from God. If you really want to know if it's a test or a temptation, is that going to take you closer to God? Or is it going to take you away from God? That is the simplest thing to know between a test and temptation. And we just looked at 4 tests and temptations, and there's a closeness to them, right? They're almost like the same aspect, but one is going to draw you closer to God. When you pass the test of pride, you come to God in humility, right? So when you pass the test of purpose, you know you're on God's side in all things. But if you give in to the temptation of a lesser purpose, then that's going to pull you away from God or to another god like a golden calf. All right, so I think that understand that. But what you need to know that I think is just a beautiful thing is regardless of whether or not you're facing a test or a temptation, I want to look at James chapter 1, verse 12. It says this: God blesses those who patiently endure testing and temptation. It's okay if you get tempted. If you don't get tempted, then you're either not breathing or the devil really isn't worried about you. If you haven't been tempted lately, you need to check in with God. Because that means the devil kind of likes where you're at. If you're tested, that means God likes where you're at. Because tests draw us closer to God, but temptations draw us away from God. And so, God blesses those who patiently endure testing and temptation. Afterward, they will receive the crown of life that God has promised to those who love him. Crown of life, we don't get that until we're in heaven. So every one of us are going to be tested, and every one of us are going to be tempted. And we just need to endure them all and them both. We're going to walk through the questions and the challenges real quick. The challenge is this: as you face challenges this week, ask yourself, is this drawing me closer to God or away from God? And that's why I call them challenges, because some of your challenges are tests and some of them are temptations. And so are these challenges helping you draw closer to God or away from God? The answer will help you better know if it's a test or if it's a temptation. All right? The questions are really, there's 4 questions, but they're twofold. It's this: one is, what tests are you facing? How can you draw closer to God through them? And then, what temptations are you dealing with? How are these revealing your distance from God? The temptations revealing how far away you are from God, and so you want to draw closer to him. And so find the test that is hidden near that temptation, and I think you'll see that moment be true. So I encourage you to take these. Oh, you already have that? I didn't know I gave that to you. That's the deeper dive, so we can take that off. Don't give it to them. They don't get to see it yet. The deeper dive, I'll be sharing those 2 tests like on Tuesday on our YouTube channel. So I didn't even know I gave those to you. So good job, babe. Have a great time walking through this. You know, tonight, come back for just a night of worship. We're just going to have a great time worshiping God. May have an altar response. We're just going to say, hey, God, what do you want to do in this place and in our lives? Online, we'll have night of worship with you as well, so you can join us. And then also, I'll be heading over to Cafe Aroma, and Savannah already grabbed the donuts, some donuts that are over there for you guys. And just, you got to come say hi to me before you get a donut. So you just don't get the donut. You actually have to talk to me, even if it's just for 5 words or something like that. So, all right. Great to have you guys all here, online, in person. We love you. Have an incredible Sunday afternoon. We'll see you back here tonight, 6 o'clock. And if you're wondering about your students, Momentum students, they are part of night of worship tonight as well. So we want them to be here. And Austin, preschool and down childcare tonight as well. Thank you, Austin. Appreciate it, man. God bless you. You guys go. We'll see you tonight, night of worship. Maybe you need Jesus to help you. Maybe you don't have Jesus, and this is one of the things that's struggling for you. I want you to come forward as we sing this song. We're going to ask everyone to stand, and we're going to sing this together. But if you want to respond, I want to tell you this. This is going to be the first altar response where I'm not going to require you to come up with a mask. If you wear a mask, then I have my own mask, and I will have my mask to pray with you. But this is the first time that we're letting you come forward without wearing a mask from a prayer time. And so I'm just going to let you know, we pray, and we have, we call Risk with Purpose, and we're going to have a Risk with Purpose. If you don't know what we're referencing, is Jesus touched the leper before he healed the leper, and Jesus didn't get leprosy. So we believe in risking with purpose. And so we're going to have that opportunity. Maybe no one's going to pray with you. You're just going to come up and respond and just say, you know what, I feel the tests. I feel the temptations. I need Jesus today to help me in one or both. Go ahead and stand. God, I pray right now, there are people in this room who are dealing with tests. They're being tested right now in different areas of their life. It might be the 4 areas we mentioned today, but it might be something more. God, some people are here being tempted in those other sides of the flip side of the test. And I pray, God, to today that they simply would make an active decision to step towards you and say, God, help me grow in this testing. Or God, help me find the way out of this temptation. And there will be victory in both situations. I thank you. In your name we pray. Everyone said, amen. Come forward right now at this moment. If you feel like you know you're being tested or you're being tempted and you just want to respond today, and we'll pray with you. Come on. God, you're working. You're working right now in this room. You're working online with our online family. I thank you for working right now, God. For some in this room, they don't feel it. You're still working. Some in this room, they don't see it, but you're working. Because you never stop working. You never stop working. You are the way maker. You are making a way, just like you did for the Israelites. You're making a way for us to the promised land that you have for us. For that place to be a church on earth that is in heaven. That's the direction you're taking us. And for whatever reason, at times, we need to know that we have to settle somewhere and be somewhere for a time. I'm reminded that those Israelites went to Mount Sinai, and they were actually at Mount Sinai for about 2 years. Because there was something that you wanted to instill in them. There's something that you wanted to get to them. Something you needed to get out of them. There was a process. Part of that process was putting your presence very clearly right in the center of their life when you had the tabernacle built. And you want to be the center of our lives, God. Help us to recognize that. I pray for every single person who has responded either at the front or at their seat or in their home, and they have said, yes, I am dealing with testing. Help me to endure the test and help me to grow, help me to persevere, help me to become complete, not lacking anything. And for those who are being tempted, may they realize that temptation is coming from their own desires. And may their desires switch into desires that are ones that you want. Because we read in Psalms how you give us the desires of our heart. So if our desires of our heart are in line with you, then we know that our temptations will be overcome because our temptations begin with our own desires. Help us to pass the tests and not give in to the temptations. I thank you, Jesus. Thank you for this picture today that we needed to help us to grow.